Welcome back, everybody, to the Forging Roots podcast. I'm your host, Matthew Couture, and this is episode 7. On this week's episode, we have a guest, and our guest's name is Elle Ingalls. Elle Ingalls is the founder of the pressure-free method, and basically, this is a method that she came up with to help people and herself overcome stress and burnout, and to get over the hump, basically, and achieve the goals that you want to achieve for your life. And we go more in depth about what all that entails, talk about her life story and how she learned over time, because this is something she didn't start until much, much later in life. And this is something that I never really heard much about, and that you can get coaching for this kind of stuff. She also plays the violin, has worked in orchestra and symphonies and things of that nature. So we talk a bit about that, and overall, just great conversation, really nice. And I hope you guys learned something from this, because I know that I definitely took something away from it, and I learned myself. And remember to continue to keep forging them roots and learning and expanding our minds of what can make up who we are, and explore and open ourselves up to different ideas, and to sit down and actually have a conversation. So without further ado, I give you the episode with Elle Ingalls, and I hope you enjoy. All right. Hi, welcome, Elle, to Forging Roots podcast. Thank you for coming on as a guest. And why don't you just go ahead and introduce yourself and a little bit of a background, because I could mess it up and butcher it myself.
Oh, thank you. I'm so glad to be here, Matt. Thanks so much for having me on. I think this Forging Roots is a really cool idea when you were sharing it with me. And so I'm glad to be a guest of yours. So my name is Elle Ingalls, and that was not my name when I was born. So
Okay.
we're talking about names. I think this could be really an interesting thing for your audience. I grew up in New Hampshire and went to the University of Michigan, ended up in Michigan, and raised 3 sons here with my husband. And so I do some interesting things now that are not what I went to Michigan to study necessarily. Okay. I think that we have, and in fact, I've heard that the generation now in your 20s will probably have 2 or even 3 careers. But I'm also finding that to be true of people of my generation. So I'll be 60 this year, and I've had a couple different careers. Like, we're transforming a lot these days. And that's something that's very different than, say, my folks. So, so in some cases they had 2 different careers in their lifetime, but we're just going to see multiple now, which I think is kind of interesting. So now what I do after years in music, so I'm a violinist, conductor, symphony exec, and my husband and I founded a music school, which is a super cool thing that we did.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yep. And nice. So after all of that, what I do now is I created an on-the-go stress management method that helps people reduce anxiety, stress, depression, helps them get out of overwhelm, helps them really step into their full potential without all the baggage, all the limiting beliefs, all the things that really kind of crush us in life. It's almost like, the lights dim over time in our eyes. And this method helps the lights come back on. So I've been coaching it to everyone from C-suite execs and CEOs to 10-year-old hockey players and gymnasts, and everything in between. Everybody nice. In between. Yeah. So there's nobody that can't learn this method. I even coached an 80-year-old woman who was the mother of a gold medal Olympian. And she heard about me. Yeah, it was so cool, Matt. She heard about me and she said, I heard about you through the grapevine, and I've been stressed my whole life. I've tried everything, and I don't know if you can help me, or if you would help me. I'm 80. And I told her, I'm like, I would be honored to help you. She was so neat. She was like, kayaked and biked and did yoga, and she was just a really, really cool person. So I was honored to help her. And she learned my method, and it was incredible how she had her breakthrough and started using it. So, yeah.
So when did you start to begin like forming this method and think, hey, I have an idea here. This could be actually really be something that not only benefit you, but also benefit other people?
Yeah, it's there's kind of three pivotal moments in my life that got me to doing it, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
The first was back in high school. I was an athlete and I was a really good distance runner. In fact, I wanted to run at Michigan. And
Okay.
I this is kind of funny, but marketing, okay? So I was a
Mm-hmm.
marketer, I was a marketing director for a while. So marketing, the back then there were hardly any running shoes to choose from, right? So I was running in Nikes, which were pretty basic.
Yep.
And this shoe by Etonic came out, and they partnered with a lip gloss company to sell females, because a lot of females were
Oh,
starting to
okay.
run. Okay, so they're
Yep.
like, we got this cool shoe, and if you buy it, we're going to give you a free lip gloss. Okay,
Okay.
so I fell for it. I'm 17
You were one of them.
years old, right? I fall for it. The shoes had the wrong last or the wrong support in it. So my senior year, I destroyed my knees because I
Mm.
trained in the wrong shoes. And so I could hardly walk, let alone run. I had to, quit, but I didn't want to quit. So I went to the coaches and said, can I apprentice coach with you? Because I don't want to leave the team. Now, this is my senior year. This is my team. And so they said, sure. So I apprentice coached with two really great coaches. And I learned so much, but here's the weird thing that started happening. Before, especially the big meets, there would be this little line of both boys and girls
Mm-hmm.
standing there waiting to talk to me to be calm before events, because I had this way of telling them how to stay calm before events.
Okay.
And so I just like be sitting on the grass, and suddenly there's like people coming up and saying, hey, I'm feeling nervous about the triple jump or the high jump or the javelin or whatever they're about to do, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I've been a performer since I was a tiny girl on violin, so I know how to perform really well. So I would just like get them in the zone, if you will, so
Okay.
they could do well. And
Yeah.
so it was just something I started doing way back then, and then carried kind of into my profession as a musician. So I was the first woman to ever conduct the symphony orchestra at Michigan and be in that program, which was really pretty cool.
Seriously,
So
congratulations.
thanks. It was like breaking a glass ceiling. A lot of women came in after me, and but that's a real hot seat and a real spotlight, and
Mm-hmm.
so very intense competition, very intense as a performer. And so I had these little mental toughness tools that I've always used. I'm in that program, the second like big event in my life where I'm realizing that's the beginning of this. Like you asked, like what was the beginning of this?
Mm-hmm.
So I did a concert, conducted a concert with a clarinet soloist in the orchestra. Goes super well. We're back in the green room, and then clarinetist says to me, hey, that one's so great. Will you play violin on my senior recital? I want to do this Mozart clarinet quintet. And I'm like, oh, absolutely, right? Because I'm like
Mm-hmm.
happy in the moment, right? Like
Yeah.
everything's like great. And then I'm thinking, crap, I'm doing 2 degrees. I was doing a master of music and an MBA at the same time. I was working 2 jobs. I was like doing. I'm thinking, crap, I got to practice now. And
Oh
so
no.
I practice and rehearsals go great and everything. But when we stepped out on stage, normally for a senior recital, there's just like a handful of people in the hall. It's not a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this kid must have been the most popular kid in the music school because it was packed. I'm serious.
Oh
Standing room
boy.
only in the back. And all of the professors from the string department, like violin, viola, cello, they're all there to watch us. Now, I did not expect that. So we walk out on stage, and there's this huge crowd. And I performed for tons of crowds, but something about that night, we just called it stage fright back then, but I went full blown stage fright. What I had was a panic attack. Like I thought I was having a heart attack.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
And
yeah.
I could hardly breathe. My hands were sweaty. I can't see the music. And I got to lead this whole thing. And I was just like, oh my God, I'm screwing up his performance, right?
Oh no.
So we get off stage and there's actual tears in my eyes, and I'm not much of a crier unless it's tears of joy. Okay. So, and I'm like,
Okay.
oh my God, I totally screwed up. I'm so sorry. And he goes, what are you talking about? It was fine. Well, I was enough of a pro that it was okay. You know what I mean?
Yep. Yep.
But it was certainly not my best playing. I listened to the recording though, and it really was pretty fine. But that night I got back to my apartment. I'm like, I can never have this happen again. I can't have a full-blown panic attack. And we didn't even have those words back then, like in front of the orchestra.
Yeah,
What
back
would
then,
that,
for sure.
that would just be a disaster. So we didn't have internet or anything back then. I went to the library for the medical school.
Okay.
And I started doing research on mind-body connection and how to basically perfect my mental game. I didn't know what I was doing. I just wanted to know how to clean this up. And that's when I really created this little set of mental toughness tools to perform well anywhere, anytime. So so there's the second little incident.
Yep.
Now we're going to fast forward. That was like 1986. Okay.
Okay.
Fast forward to 2010. It's quite a jump. And my three boys, or three sons, the older two were playing baseball for their high school team. And we're just joking around the dining room table one night, just sitting around. And my eldest goes, Mother, you should coach the boys on the team in your mental toughness tools. We could win states this year if you would help them. And I just started laughing, like, who wants their mother in the dugout? That's right. Just crazy, right?
Not many guys want their mom out there, no.
They don't even want a mirror, right?
Right.
So I just started laughing, and he goes, I'm completely serious. I want you there. And so I looked at my son, Ned, and he goes, Mom, we want you to do this. And so that night I just started writing, and pretty much all weekend I just kept writing and refining. My husband's a pro writer, so he tightened the language, threw in some funny baseball graphics, and I had this little pamphlet. So I took the pamphlet to the tough coach first, the guy with his arms folded and then chewing his mouth and he's spitting in the spittoon, like, because if he doesn't like it, the boys will never pay attention to me. So I go to him first, which took a lot of bravery, to be honest. I called him up and he goes, come on down to my office. And I showed him what I wanted to do. And he goes, wow, this has merit. You should work with the boys. I'm completely supportive. So take it to the head coach. He goes, I think you should work with each boy one-on-one for like half an hour and just teach them this thing you're going to do. So I went to the head coach, and it was 2010. He was a financial planner, like new in he was fairly young, like in his late 20s, early 30s, and new in financial planning. And it's 2010. And so I start telling him what I want to do. And he goes, hold on a moment. Will you be my private coach? Because I need this. And so I immediately, of course, say yes, of course. I don't even know what I'm doing, right? So I say yes. And then a few days later, my department chair at the college that I've taught at it for years, she finds out what I'm doing. And she literally grabs her checkbook and goes, how much does this cost? I need it now. And so I had 2 paying clients and a whole baseball team where I'm crafting and creating this, what ends up being an actual method. And so I start working on it, and then word of mouth, people say, oh, you're going to start working with my other name, but start working with me. And so all of a sudden people are starting to work with me. And now it's been hundreds of private clients, thousands of groups. Just got another contract today to work with all of the people who work the port coming in from Canada, the bridge, those people. So I have state contracts, like all kinds of people. There isn't anybody, Matt, that can't learn this. And benefit. In fact, my student clients I love because there's no filter. They tell me exactly what they think. And they say things like, why don't they teach us this in middle school? I would have straight A's. Or, I could have gotten through something so hard, so much easier if I had these tools. People's diseases go away. People get out of anxiety that have had it for years. It's truly miraculous what this simple method I've created can do for people. And go ahead.
Yeah. So have you seen any, like, I know you said the younger. Is there a big difference when you're teaching this method? Like everyone can get it, but is the younger just grasp it easier just because they're probably not as molded, or have you seen any correlation to that yet?
That's a really great question. And the answer is no. And that
Okay.
is because each one of us is so incredibly complex.
Mm-hmm.
So I've had young people catch it pretty quickly. I had a 14-year-old girl. She was in chronic anxiety for 2 full years. And in 2.5 weeks, she had her breakthrough, her beginning of her breakthrough. And it was really because she so wanted to feel happy again. Like she had that driving need to get out of this anxiety, and she wanted it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I work really deeply with my clients on what is their vision for what they truly want. Like you as a podcaster, what is your real vision? Let's go big. Let's really
Right.
think about what you want to do in the world and how can I help you get there? The first step is to break the stress cycle, because
Right.
being locked in the stress cycle is going to keep you there. And then, like, I had a young girl who it took us months of work together because stress was just like in every fiber of her being.
Mm-hmm.
And we had to untangle all of those weird little thoughts and things that just hold us back. And you can, you can have the greatest family in the world and real supportive people, and everybody cares about your well-being, and you can still be anxious. And you
Mm-hmm.
can have a crappy family and a horrible situation, and you don't have that. So how we're built is to me very mysterious and complex. And so I've kept my method super simple so that we can address what's really going on and untangle that mess.
Mm-hmm.
So no, honestly, sometimes the age doesn't have much correlation. Um, I would say that childhood traumas, and a trauma could be, it doesn't matter what it is. Like your trauma is your trauma. Okay. So someone
Right.
else might think, why would anybody be upset about that? It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
If it's trauma to you, then so someone with a lot of that backstory, or someone who constantly has in their head, I need to be so perfect. I need to be so perfect. I'm never good enough. A lot of the people that I work with are high achievers. And so they're suffering in silence because they don't want anybody to know that
Mm.
they've got some stress going down. But their body reveals it. Your body tells
Yeah.
the story, you know? Your
Yeah.
face will tell the story. I used to have big stress acne on my cheeks and eczema all
Mm-hmm.
over my
Yep.
hands. Skin will tell the story. Your gut will tell the story. Do you get sick to your stomach? So many kids have an upset stomach trying to go to school every day.
Yeah.
That's a
Yeah,
stomach.
absolutely.
And you take them to the doctor, and the doctor says, there's nothing wrong. It's psychosomatic. Well, there is something wrong. It's a triggering of the stress response.
So is this also kind of piggybacking off the doctor thing? A lot of times now I feel like they just want to push a pill to help with anxiety or something. Is this like a basically alternative, or is this something you do hand in hand with it? Or
Yeah.
yeah,
So
what's
if
that kind of
someone,
look like?
that's really, boy, you have great questions, Matt. Thank you.
Thank you.
You
I
have a
try.
great question. Yeah. So I'm going to just aside, it tells me you're super present with your person to have good questions like that. You know what I mean? Not all
Mm-hmm.
podcasters can do that. So that's a real gift
Thank
you
you. I
have.
appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So with that question, like if someone is in therapy or someone's on medication, it's not my job to have them not need that anymore. They're going to work on the medication thing with their psychiatrist or the person that's prescribing that medication to them. But what I'm going to work on is present to future.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever's happened in the past, we can talk about, always in the framing of, well, that has made you strong, or that is, you're a survivor. You survived that situation. So now what are the lessons, and how are we going to take that forward to empower you? So I'm about empowering someone, using my method to stop triggering the stress response, that fight or flight stress response, clean your body up from the inside, because a lot of the anxiety people feel, it's biologically driven.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the hormones that we release in fight or flight actually make you feel anxious for no reason. So you can stay locked in anxiety for hours, days, weeks,
Mm-hmm.
months, years, simply because of your biology. You're never out of fight or flight, basically. So when I teach people how to break that, then they can say, wow, I don't think I need to do this anymore, or I don't need to do this. Sometimes I have a client come to me and I encourage them to get therapy because they've got some things they need to work out. And that's not my work.
Okay.
My work is to break the stress response and craft a fabulous kick-ass life. Okay.
Okay. Very nice.
Yeah, that's my work. And I'm happy to work on some of those stories that you might be telling yourself because of stuff that's happened. But if you need to go deep on that, I usually encourage someone to get the therapy they need.
Okay.
So sometimes my clients are doing therapy at the same time. And I have had some people who have been able to get off some of their medications just because they no longer feel the feelings. So
Which is awesome. That's a good thing. Yeah.
Oh, beautiful. And honestly, I do a lot of, right now I'm researching a lot on Asperger's, autism, ADD, ADHD, and the drugging of our children, basically. And having all 3 boys, none of them had any of that or had to ever be on medications, but a lot of their friends did. And I've seen and I've had clients come to me and they'll walk right in the room, especially the younger ones, but adults too that are diagnosed ADD, ADHD. And the kid will say, well, I have ADHD, as if that explains their whole life. And so the diagnosis begins to frame who the person is. And that's not true. That is not true. So when we can soften that a little bit and come to understand that basically any sort of mental diagnosis is a list of symptoms. Well, you don't have all of those symptoms all of the time.
Right.
You don't.
Yeah, no.
So it can feel like you might, especially if you're locked in the stress response. But what I've come to understand in my research is that the real underpinning cause of all of that is the release of these hormones. And if we can begin to stop that for someone, it's really, really cool what starts to happen. And I can't say it's easy. The method is simple, but we've got these habits of reaction that are generations old. Like if you woke up every morning because someone went, Matt, hurry up, we're going to be late. Like every single morning, you built a pattern within you where every single morning you triggered the stress response. So now all those math facts you worked on so hard at night, and then you go to take your math test and you don't quite get them all, even though you knew them the night before. It's
automatically.
It's not your fault.
Okay.
You cannot think straight when you're in fight or flight.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Huge. I mean, I've got kids. I had a 12-year-old hockey player. He came to me for hockey. He's a hotshot kid.
All right.
And the second session, he walks in, he goes, this helps with school, doesn't it? I go, yeah, how do you know? And he goes, well, first of all, this is what he said. He goes, I'm a CD student. And that's interesting that he defines himself like that, right?
Yeah.
I'm a CD student. And he goes, but I got an A on my history test for the first time ever. And I looked at him and I go, so you're not a CD student, are you? It was test anxiety. It was anxiousness about the test and the quizzes. So he's always had horrible grades. He ended up straight A's, honor student in high school.
Wow.
So think about it, Matt. What if he went all the way through school as a CD student? What kind of self-esteem do you think he'd have?
Right.
What would he feel would be even possible in his life? And I got invited to his open house, the senior open house.
Yep.
So I go to his open house, and I mean, I love the kid. The kid loves me, like super hugs and everything. Now he's a man, he's 18 years old. Right? But he's like taking me around to meet all of his teachers and saying, this is why I did well in your class. It's her. It was the coolest, most beautiful thing.
For sure.
And, I didn't even know. I mean, I sort of kept in touch with him, but it wasn't until I went to that open house and he goes, yeah, I had straight A's. I'm an honor student.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's kind of similar to I don't know if you know much on Ben Carson. I remember the movie Gifted Hands came out, and same thing with him. Grew up in Detroit. Mom couldn't read, CD student, and that's how he would describe himself back then.
Yes.
Then he had
Yeah.
that breakthrough of like, oh wait, no, I can put forth and get past that anger that he used to have as a kid. So it's definitely there's something to that. And do you
Yeah.
think like you were saying earlier too about the generations, do you have a feeling on why that was something like we didn't use words like anxiety or panic attacks and it was kind of just brushed off back then versus now? Do you think that's something that's improving? How like comparison
I
back
think,
then?
okay, that's a really, really good question. Um, I want to share something that kind of blew my mind actually. I was coaching in a school and they had me work with the different grades. And I was working with a group of 5th and 6th graders. And a 6th grade girl raised her hand and said, Mrs. Ingalls, do you know that some girls are faking their anxiety to get attention? Wow. Wow. Has it come to that? That the only way you're going to get attention from your parents or from somebody else is to actually pretend that you're having anxiety? That blew my mind. So
Yeah.
there it's if you become what you focus on, number one. Our society has become so focused on all of this that I almost wonder if it's going a negative direction as a result, to be honest.
Yeah.
So and we just didn't we used different words when I was a kid. I mean, you just say, hey, I'm a little nervous or I'm a little worried. You know, we didn't use anxiety. That wasn't a word that people even, it wasn't in the vocabulary really. So it was just different words, but people still felt what they felt. And I
Right.
would say that males more so than females, when I think of all the men who suffered from serious heart attacks, and still do, because they shove down emotion.
Yep.
And so it's really interesting. I'm just going to claim this right now, to be honest. I'm just going to be honest with you.
All right.
In my thoughts, I believe that our current mental health system is broken, that it is so linked to pharma and giving a pill, that we're just drugging people who really don't need to be drugged. We're not addressing the real cause, which is that we've created families that don't actually have unconditional love. We've thrown out a lot of the most important elements of how to be people in relationship to each other. And so people feel so much judgment. They feel so not good enough that they're turning to all kinds of ways to self-medicate any way they can. I mean, they're grabbing Adderall just to take tests, you know? I mean, nobody talks about it, but
No,
it's like
but
80% of kids are doing it. Let's be
right.
honest.
Yeah.
And what that speed, you know, so we're, and why would you even give speed to a 9-year-old? I mean,
Yeah.
I can't even comprehend what's really going on, except that we've lost patience, we've lost unconditional love, and we've really lost the importance as a society of being okay with people being different.
I totally agree with that. That's kind of something I've kind of come to realize myself. I totally agree with the big pharma and like people just instantly going, well, here's a pill is the first, like some people do need it 100%. I get that.
Sure.
But when it's the first thing out of their mouth and they just give you a prescription, walk away without talking through things, or even like went through school. I don't know how much I really think the school system's even set up for all kids because it's so standardized. And like, there are kids that should be doing more music or like, even in my case, I like to work with my hands. I found that out later. I went to 2.5 years of college doing computer information systems, having a whole panic attack to where very similar, like couldn't breathe, doing all that. And then once I finally figured out later, oh, now I do woodworking. I do countertops and doors right now. And I've been enjoying that.
Yeah.
And just the whole, like, do you think that the school system, even just the standardized testing, this is what you have to be? Because I remember that was something as a kid, It's like, this is just not how I learn or and I would stress about it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I truly believe that the drugging that's going on and the forcing of being a certain way, we're losing our brain trust. We're losing some of the most brilliant minds that are in this country by drugging them. I can't even begin to imagine what we're losing. Some of the most brilliant people are more, and you can't say they don't have focus, because you give them this thing over here. For example, I remember one of my son's friends had a serious trouble reading. So they were always pulled out of class and tutored in reading all through school, right? Pulled out for the special session to do some extra reading. So he's 18 when I had this conversation with him. And I said, I have a question for you. Do you guys get Sports Illustrated? Oh yeah, ever since I was a kid. I go, so you read that magazine? Oh yeah. I go, you don't have any trouble reading Sports Illustrated, do you? Oh no. I go, and what about your welding manuals? Do you have any trouble? No. Oh no, not at all. So you just don't want to read the things that they were trying to get you to read in these classes growing up, right?
Oh, 100%. I was the same way, non-reader, and now I read. I found my favorite author back in 2018, I think it was, The Terminalist. He's got an Amazon show coming out now, and it's from a former Navy SEAL. And once I finally found something that I liked, totally different view on reading than I used to have in high school.
Completely. And I really believe that, and my sons would tell me this also, that over the past 30 years, we have feminized education, and boys are being disenfranchised. They can't play the games they used to love to play on the playground. They can't do all the stuff that they're used to doing, that they used to be able to do. The curriculum, I mean, if you picked things and had cool books that are about the things that they liked, we would see a different outcome. And no child is supposed to sit still no human is supposed to actually sit still for more than 20 minutes. Like, we're supposed to have activity, and your cortex grows back to front with gross motor motion, big motions. In fact, some of my tools are big motions, because as an adult, one of the only ways you can create new neural pathways is a large motion. So I interrupt your stress response with a large motion. So your brain goes like, wow, what am I up to? What do I do now? And then we put in something new than how you used to respond.
Interesting.
So, yeah, all my tools have a neuroscience component to them, which is why people get results pretty quickly with me.
Yeah.
Because it's just all based on
science. That's literally just changing like the way in the brain. Is that what you're saying? Like, it just changes different parts of the brain that are working in that moment. Okay, because when I did some counseling after the school and the panic attack and trying to get some help, and the guy I was with gave me a technique, and he was explaining, I can't remember now if it was the front lobe or back lobe or what part of the brain, but just when I would start to feel anxious, sit down, focus on a chair, close your eyes, focus on the chair, the feeling of it. And if you have a thought, let it go, like just acknowledge it and move on and just focus on that chair or a sound that you're hearing. And it just redirected, and all the anxiety part of your brain that's freaking out to using different part of your brain, and it was gone.
Right.
So that's very interesting that you're able to use that in a stress-free method. Like, I guess it makes sense to me, but that's awesome.
In my course, I have over 40 tools, again, because you're unique. That tool might work for you. It might not work for this person over here.
Right.
So I've built many tools so that I can find the right, and sometimes they use them in combinations, my clients do, because you've got a really big stressor and you need like 2 or 3 things to do to overcome the pattern that you've been in every time when that stressors come along. And it's fascinating. But yeah, there's the ways that you can use, I guess I truly believe we're fascinatingly built. And we're designed to, and as one of my young clients said, you're just teaching people how to be mature, how to be grown-ups. But most grown-ups don't know how to be grown-ups.
That's fair. That's fair.
Absolutely right. We act like we're still in junior high.
We
And,
can.
it's time for, and there's a reason for that too. It's like this 15-year cycle, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
So we had the 70s, which was the real cultural revolution, as far as some of the things that have been going on for millennia broke. For example, first thing in the morning and first thing and last thing at night. So just when you're coming out of sleep and when you're just going to sleep, what did people do in almost every culture, and still do in many cultures and religions all around the world? Do you know?
Not off the top of my head.
So they prayed.
Prayed. Oh, okay.
They prayed. They
Yeah.
said their morning prayers and they said their evening
I
prayers.
should know that because I do that. But I was thinking broad, but yeah, that's true.
Sure. Nope. And so, cultural revolution, that there's so fewer people doing that now
That's
than
why I
there
was not
were.
coming up with it. Yeah.
Exactly. You do
100%.
it. So what's fascinating with that is that really changed the culture tremendously, because those first morning hours or first
Mm-hmm.
morning minutes and just before you drift off to sleep are one of the only times your brain is in theta waves, and you can actually connect subconscious and conscious. You can actually do some really beautiful work.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're moving into prayers of gratefulness, prayers of confidence, prayers of vision for yourself, for your family, for your life, for everyone, for this entire world, that is beautiful. And
Yeah.
humans used to do that all, in
Mm-hmm.
every culture. So that was a shift. It was also what I refer to as the me generation. It's all about me, my pleasures, my this, my
Yep.
that. So then 1970 was the first year that we had a 50% divorce rate.
Mm.
The first time that we had children, 50% of children with a split household.
Mm.
So now those kids are now in their 40s.
Yep.
Okay. And having their own. And I can't tell you how many people I coach that are in their 40s and say, well, I don't even know what a good relationship looks like because I never saw one.
Yep.
And so those relationships are really rocky. And it's kind of like the split generation, like every 15 years, I'm going to say,
Okay.
because I see that less in my own generation, my own little slice,
Mm-hmm.
because my parents were not a part of the Cultural Revolution. They were just before it.
Gotcha.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep. I gotcha. Yeah.
And
I
so,
was gonna say that's something in my growing up generation, like kids, like, oh yeah, come from a split household. Me, thankfully, don't have that. Both my parents have been together. I mean, my dad was divorced before him and my mom had me, but they've been together ever since. So I understand both sides. Like I got my half sister, my sister Kylie. So she's got that split. And then I have had this the whole time. And then there's of course other kids in school, but I've seen just the difference, and especially now as I've gotten older and I meet new people, whether it be in college or relationships, and I just realized now how lucky I was to have the parents that stayed together, and how different it was for so many people in my generation, because it is crazy how many that you hear the stories. I'm like, you don't feel comfortable just going to your mom and being able to share anything, like, or to your dad, and have, like, to me that's just blows my mind. And the fact that I do that to my friends blows their mind.
Yes, yeah, it's really incredible. And I remember I had a babysitter whose parents divorced, for my babysitter for my kids.
Mm-hmm.
And I was taking her home, and of course I had to say, am I taking you to your dad's house or your mom's house? Here's what's so weird. She doesn't have her own room, because she has a room here and a room here.
Mm-hmm.
And that was so enlightening to me, that wow, she and so many other children have two rooms.
Yep.
They don't have one room that is all their stuff and all their things. It's split.
Yeah.
Every once in a while you hear about the parents that let the kids stay in one house and the parent goes in and out. I'm almost like, that might be a pretty good idea. It's like, so interesting. But yeah, so I think that what we're seeing is some of the fallout of that, and children are the ones that have suffered. And I'm not saying that every marriage should stay together by any means,
Right.
but there is fallout. There is fallout from the decisions that we make, from the actions that we make in the household. One of my kids was talking with friends in kind of one of those late night conversations, and it's like whether or not your parents drink. So if your parent drinks every night, you can't actually trust their emotional response.
Mm.
You don't know if it's the drunk dad talking or the real dad
the real
talking.
dad. Right.
And so that will put a child always in fight or flight, because you're not quite sure what you're going to get.
100%. Like my dad used to drink before. I've never seen him have a drink. Like both my parents, they don't drink. So I have that same thing. And that's literally the thing that I've talked about with other people is like, I don't drink, even though I'm 20, I'll be 24 in June. And I just don't. And it's not because I think I need it or anything, but I don't want that questioning ever for my kids one day of like, or just even risking, because there's alcoholism on my mom's side of the family and dad's side of the family. It's just, I've never needed it, so I stay away. But
no, it's important. I didn't have really a drink until I didn't like drink wine or any of that until after nursing my last baby at age 40.
Really?
And it was similar to you that my husband doesn't drink. Like it's extremely rare that he would have any sort of alcohol. He, it's a very occasional thing for him.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to a wedding this weekend. We might each have one drink, but it's not like my kids didn't. So it's fast. That's really fascinating. And you get to choose. I love to empower people and say, you get to choose. You don't have to do it, because people will pressure you.
Yep, they've tried. They have tried.
They will pressure you. They'll pressure you to do all kinds of things, and you get to choose. It's your life. And it's it means you may have to choose some different friends, but that's okay. And I love to say that a lot of the people that my friend and I both hang out with and coach, we're all misfit toys. Like we don't fit over here really. So okay.
Love it.
Don't worry. There's plenty of people in the world that want to live at an up-leveled, optimal way. So there's plenty of people to connect to, and that's one of the blessings of the internet is that you
over 7 billion to choose from. So we got some choices there.
You got some choices, and here's something you were talking about. The millennials, Gen X, Gen Z, all the different generations.
Mm-hmm.
I really am a proponent of multi-generation friendships. You don't have to be friends with people just your age. So one of my closest and dearest friends is, I'm going to be 60, she's 42. And then I just met a young woman in 2021. She's 22. She just graduated from college in December. And she's one of my dearest friends. She calls me, she calls, when she introduces me, she goes, I am like a mini Elle.
That's funny.
This girl's from Cameroon, right? So she's from Africa.
Oh, okay.
She's, and so she's the mini me. And I mean, we just completely connected. And we have similar values.
Mm-hmm.
We care about similar things. We see the world as possibility. Like we're just connected. And so I really encourage people, find people of all kinds of ages. You don't have to just hang out with your peer group. That's a made up school thing.
Yeah. Do you think too, like mentorship? Because I feel like that's something people don't really talk about or do. Like, is finding, like you said, different generational gaps, because you can learn things from different generations, whether it be older, younger, and your peers. But I think it's very important. Something we've walked away from is having that mentor. And then once you've been mentored, doing the same thing, being a mentor to somebody else that's younger.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. In fact, when I told you about how my kids wanted me to coach their baseball team, 2 days before that, I had just enlisted a mentor to be in my life, and we had our first meeting. And he's very, very tough gentleman. He's very strong. He's an incredible economic developer, one of the best in the country. And I asked him to take a look at this. I was building a business on a financial concept, so I was having his eyes on it, and he was coaching me on it. And then I said, and then he stopped and he goes, I'm sorry, but I read your bio online and I don't think this is what you should be doing. You are so multi-talented and this is not it. And he goes, I know you're working on it, but just stay open. I think there's something else. And it was just 2 nights later that my sons asked me to do that mental toughness thing. So my second meeting with my mentor, I said, well, I'm on something completely different. And he just got a big smile on his face. I mean, it was just so funny. And I showed him what I was going to do. And he was like, oh, wow, this is interesting. And so you're right. I mean, having hit that mentor in my life changed my life. And it was my second mentor, an actual paid for mentor, so a coach. I did coaching with the best-selling author, Robert Allen. I worked with him for a year. And it was actually on his stage in his home in San Diego. So he had like a stage in his home, 20 leather recliner seats, like in a stage. The whole wall was a computer, touchscreen computer, like really
cool.
And I changed the name I go by on his stage.
That's where that came from. Was it changing the name? Okay.
So
could you dive more into that? Because I'm very curious on the whole change in the name and why and what that all meant for you.
Yeah. So for you as the listener listening to this, before Matt and I got on there, he's Matthew or Matt. And I asked him, which one does he prefer? So there's a reason I asked, is because there's like something deep inside us that we really want to be called this or that. And I'm kind of into numerology too. So I like doing numerology on people, and the name you use is like claiming what you want to have happen. So it's powerful. So anyway, I was on Robert Allen's stage, and the instructions for this little exercise, first one, when we got there, was we had 60 seconds to take notes to introduce ourselves in a way people would always remember our whole name. Okay. So I get up there, I go, so my first name is Pamela. It's a name I don't really like, so we're just going to move it over here. And I took my hands and like moved it over. And then I said, so stare it. You may see those signs on those old buildings of Empire State Building with the steel girder guys out on the thing. It says Starrett Thompson Company. Well, the Starrett Tool Company, my grandpa's cousins, built the Empire State Building. So I go like this with my hands up and down. And then I go, and then my husband's last name is Ingalls, right? So I'm Ingalls. And yes, he's related to Laura Ingalls. They share the same ancestor, and everybody laughs. Right?
That's funny.
And it's funny. And so I start going off the stage, and he was on a stool, like by the steps of this little stage. And he goes, stop right there. You can't build a brand on a name you don't like. So I immediately quipped back, because I'm pretty snarky sometimes. I go, no, well, I'm building a brand on the pressure-free method, on pressure-free living. And he goes, well, if you think that, you're in the wrong room. So he came right back at me and he goes, go back up on the stage there. You're building a brand on you. So think about it. Deepak Chopra, Tony Robbins, Brian Tracy. You don't think about their methods or their books. You think about them. So it's the same thing for me.
Okay.
So I go back up there and he goes, you can't build a brand on a name you don't like. You don't like Pamela, so you can't be called that. Well, I don't like Pam at all. I hate that. And Pamela was great running a symphony and conducting and all that. Like, it's a great name, right? But with coaching, I need something lighter, easier. So this guy who was in our group, he kind of looked like Harrison Ford. And he goes, why don't you go by Elle or Ella, the middle or last part of your name? And the moment he said that, it was like, oh,
it clicked.
This works. Here's what's so weird. We just recently moved, well, 3 years ago here. We downsized our big old house. I'm cleaning everything out. In one of my own journals from like years before, I had written in there that I wished I was called Elle.
Oh, okay. Nice.
Isn't that wild?
That's pretty crazy.
So, my middle name is Elizabeth. Like growing up, Pamela Elizabeth Starrett. Elizabeth was supposed to be my first name, but at the last minute, my parents put the Pamela on it. So when I was out in San Diego with my coach, I got back to the hotel room that night and I just was thinking about this and journaling. And I'm like, oh my gosh, the Pamelas that I'm named after. Okay, so there's a couple of them. One of them was my mom's maid of honor who drank herself to death with an 11-year-old son, by the way. She was really rich. She had a summer home where my mom had an old farm in New Hampshire. They were summer people. And
Gotcha.
married this super rich guy in Connecticut and was in a miserable marriage. And she just drank herself to death, like died of cirrhosis. Crazy, She was like 31 years old, like ridiculous. So that's Pamela, right? Another Pamela, I have a very strong suspicion, was abused by her father because her father did creepy things to me. Okay. So I'm like, okay, that's creepy, right?
Yep.
So I think that by just going by Elle, meaning Elizabeth, is the first syllable of is Elle, right?
Yeah.
The middle syllable of Pamela is Elle. All of a sudden, it was like I was stripping off all this crap. So another thing happened on Robert's stage where I actually told the story of some crappy thing that happened to me. Like it was really wild. And I've never told that to anybody, right? Ever. And I told the story and it was like so freeing and everybody's crying. Like it was horrible. It was like, it was horrible. Everybody was crying. I felt everybody's pain in the room because everybody has crap. Just like lift up and kind of pour through me and out of me. It was like I was the vehicle for the whole room to cleanse from their childhood crap, if you will. So I went through that experience. And then my friend, Leonardo, he goes, you need to change your name permanently. Like this, you are just transforming in days here by going by Elle instead of Pamela, right? Like you just have to do this. I haven't changed it legally, but I came back to Michigan now. Okay, that's California. It's one thing to change your name in California, but to come back to Michigan and claim that you're going to be called something different, right? Well, thank goodness for social media. You just change your name on social media and suddenly everybody thinks of you as that.
Right.
So that's exactly what I did. And that was 2012. So this will be like my 10th. April 15th is what I consider my second birthday because I was 50 when I did it, actually.
Okay.
So this will be my 10th year as Elle. And I'm telling you, Matt, it was weird because people thought I was crazy.
Like, why are you doing this? It's been 50 years. What's going on?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. But when you're called what you deeply feel is right. Like even my kids, they call me Elle. My husband, like he never used my first name. He called me all these weird names, right? Because he never thought that name matched me. So names are cool, and a lot of people are walking around with a name they don't like. Well, I'm going to give you permission that at some point in your life, go ahead and change it.
All right, I will definitely keep that in the back of my mind.
Yeah.
Something you said too, the social media, like you can make up any names you want. How much do you see the social media being brought up and people having this problem and having to use the stress-free method that you use? Because it can be a great thing for conversations like this to happen, but it can be so negative.
Oh my gosh,
and just all the stuff that's pumped out, especially to young kids, like that are just so impressionable, and then they get all these things. I know you were saying like girls faking the anxiety just so they have parents or people that want to talk to them. And so do you have any thoughts or like see that being an issue?
So some people don't have any issues at all with it. It's like, and it's like a tool, like you're saying, is it a tool? If it's connecting you in a positive way, then that's beautiful. And that's how I use it. I mean, I'm connected to people I would never be connected with in New Hampshire. I left in 1980, and to be reconnected with my friends from back there, it's so joyous, so it makes me very happy, and family that I would never be connected with without it. So, but I think you need to be really honest with yourself Is it something that is hurting you?
Mm.
Or is it something that is helping you? Do you need to take some apps off? Do you need to take some things off your phone and maybe just go on computer once in a while? I help people
Mm.
figure that
Mm-hmm.
out. Honestly, once we get cracking, once we get moving with pressure free, you have the wherewithal to stop scrolling. You have the wherewithal to make your choices because you have willpower. Our
Yep.
willpower shuts down in fight or flight. So it's very hard to say no to things. It's very hard to say yes to things you're supposed to do and say no to things you're not when you're in fight or flight because your brain is not working correctly.
Mm-hmm.
So some of my clients, they say, yeah, I'm going to go off it, and I'm like, good, you're making a choice. It's serving you. But and I really feel for young people, although when I think of some of the crap that happened when I was young without any social media, like real
Mm-hmm.
crappy stuff, like it's really no different. I mean, the Mean Girls stuff, you know what I mean?
Yep.
I mean, always happens. And if it wasn't this, it was with magazines, or you know what I mean? Like there's always been something, even in the 20s, and go back in any time period, and you had
Mm-hmm.
that kind of stuff, because there's just some things that are innately biological about what we do with each other,
Yeah.
and scarcity mode and all of that. If you're not taught to believe in abundance, if you're not taught to believe in love and forgiveness and unconditional love, like if you're not raised
Yep.
to move into values like that, it's a dog eat dog crazy world.
Yeah. 100%.
And people hurt each other in horrific ways. And we're guilty of it. I mean, I can raise my hand and think, oh my God, I can't believe I did that to her or him or
Yeah.
whatever.
You end up, I think that's a saying, you end up hurting the people you love the most because you know what will hurt them the most. And
Yeah.
to not be able to come back around with that unconditional love and the forgiveness and being apologetic of knowing, nope, that's not right. And yeah, the social media just in general, like it can be such a beautiful thing, like you said, and so positive, but then I do just see like kids that will, I don't know if it's necessarily waste time on it depending on what they're doing, but
Right.
like they almost won't live in the real world and go out and
Right.
do things. And it's like I'm kind of at a, like, what's the word? I'm kind of juxtaposed to it because doing this podcast, I want to share that with people and have them watch this and listen to it.
Right.
But at the same time, I'm also encouraging them get out and do things because you don't want to just live your life through seeing what I do or what other people do on YouTube and Instagram.
Right.
Don't live vicariously through them. It can be cool to connect and talk, and but then like I know I used to be guilty of it as a kid, like, oh man, I really wish I could go be like that guy and do some archery practice in the backyard. And then it's just like clicked with me one day, just go buy a bow and do it then,
Do it. We're all
just go
hungry.
do it. And
Yeah.
that's like, and something like that is for me is just such a great stress reliever. I could sit there all day and just sling arrows in the backyard, and rather than just watch and just go, oh, I wish I could do this or that. And yeah, I don't know. But
Yeah, no, I hear you. And we've always had forms of entertainment that can
mhm.
keep us kind of locked into that mindless scrolling. Now we scroll,
Yeah. Yep.
And so yeah, I think that you can get inspiration, you can get connection. And if it's turning into something else, just really monitor it for yourself and make the
Yeah.
choice. Make the choice, do the right thing for yourself. And parents, I really know you're navigating a lot of crazy stuff right now. I talk to people like, wow,
Yep.
11 years old and they're doing this, it's just really, to me, a little bit sad. I mean, honestly, and the things that you can now instantly see that no one used to be able to see, and that
Mhm.
it's, wow, so much addiction and so much.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's up to us, and each family gets to design that. On the other hand, you have families that live very beautiful, very, very quiet lives. They don't do any of it.
Yeah.
So, we live in a country, and we're very blessed to live in a country where we're free. It
Yep.
kind of upsets me when I hear the media say, well, just go to www. I go, I have relatives in New Hampshire that have never owned a computer and never will, and they don't even have a smartphone. They have none of that. They never will. They
Yeah.
never will. And they're all ages. They don't care about any of that. And
Right.
so we make this assumption that people are connected in, but not everybody is.
Hmm.
It's not just socioeconomic, it's just personal choice or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting when we make blanket statements and ideas and think that everyone is connected, because they're not. And
Right.
people in this country, I love the fact that we get to choose how we wish to live. And if you want to live in a cabin with an outhouse and raise your
You can
family,
do so.
you can do so.
Yeah.
And that is, raise your own food and have a little windmill, like
Yeah,
you can,
seriously. We are very fortunate to live in the country that we do and have the ability and the freedom to do so, because
yeah,
that's the beauty of, I mean, it's called the mixing pot because there's a little bit of everything here, like
yeah,
everybody can, as long as we can agree to just let everybody choose within means of to do what they want. I'm cool with
yeah.
that. I'm all for freedom. Like
And,
that's amazing.
the generation now that my folks grew up in the Depression.
Hmm.
So when I'm gone, no one will remember those stories. Do you know what I mean? Like how my
Mm.
folks grew up and then what they created out of nothing, because no matter who you were, everything crashed. So
Hmm.
whatever wealth your family had, it was like,
Yep.
and people had to bring themselves up from the ashes. And both my folks had to do that. They put themselves through college. They built and created. And I was sharing this the other day. This is crazy, but I come from frugal New Hampshire. This is how frugal we were. So my father was working for a bank, working his way up. He ended up being president of banks, and
Yep.
like working his way up and saving money, because you only buy assets. Okay. So
Okay.
saving money to have a summer house on Lake Winnipesaukee someday. Like that was the dream, right?
Hmm.
So he's wheeling, dealing, he's like saving his money. We had a boat, okay, but the next step is actually have a little house, right?
Yep.
So when we would take baths, first of all, we only took baths as little girls. I'm talking about as little girls, not as
Yep.
teenagers. Okay.
Yep.
Twice a week, Wednesday night, Sunday night, twice a week. Okay. It was either Saturday night or Sunday night. I thought it was Sunday night, but twice a week.
Hmm.
And so I had two little sisters. I'm the oldest. First, we'd wash the baby, okay, in the bathtub. Then we'd add a little bit more water. And now my middle sister goes. Now we add a little bit more water. Now I get to go. Then my mother added a little water. She gets to go. Then my father adds a little water. He gets to go. Because my parents, my father bathed in a tub by the wood stove, okay, where everybody bathed. So,
Hmm.
and water is money going down the drain. So you don't waste money. You don't waste money by any means, but you don't waste water, right?
Right.
Because you pay for every drop that you turn that faucet on, right?
Yep.
My
Yep.
parents pumped the water.
Oh my gosh. That is, yep. Yep.
so,
That's very
so do you
saving
see what I'm
money.
talking? Like, so coming from that into this, and now just kind of watching how people live today, it's like, I have no idea.
I was just on TikTok today, and it was something of this girl that she said, I can never live my life again without this. And it was like this little port in the side of the wall, and it was for the laundry, for the hamper. You throw the clothes in, it's a vacuum, it sucks it in, brings it right to the hamper. I'm like, oh my gosh, how much did you spend on that to go through your whole house when you can literally just walk it to the other room? Like you tell that to people, like you said, like you go back 50 years and tell somebody that, or even just that
Oh
their
yeah,
phone's right here and what you can do. Like my
yeah.
dad's even said, like, you tell your great grandma that she can, because my great grandma came over during the war, met my great grandpa in the war. She's from France, she's French, and came
Okay.
over. They married happily ever after. But if she never saw her family after she left there again,
Oh, right,
and
right.
she was like 16, 17 at the time or something, like young. But to tell
Wow.
her that she can FaceTime her family and see them through this brick would have blew her mind.
Oh my gosh,
Like,
yes. We
yeah,
would
it's
talk about that. We would talk about that growing up. That's someday the phone is going to be able to see you, so you better have your clothes on. That's what we used to say.
it's true.
It's
It's true
so
nowadays.
funny. Yeah. Oh my gosh. It's just very interesting to see how people's lives have changed, and what people, again, going back to the idea of what are your roots, and
Hmm.
what are the values of those roots, you know?
Mm,
And what roots do you want to establish? And that's one thing, that pressure free
hmm.
sets you free to craft the life you want. So if you
Yeah.
had some crappy things in your life, it's like, no, this is my value. I claim it. I claim it, and this is what I want to build now. And when
Yeah.
you have reduced, when you have, really changed up and gotten out of the stress cycle, it's just phenomenal to see what happens. I watch it with my own kids. It's just so amazing.
Yeah. That's awesome to see how the two parallel each other. Like that's totally the vision that I was having of same thing. Like just because you may have a crappy background of your family or don't necessarily agree with things that you learned growing up doesn't mean that that has to be who you are or what you are. Like, let's figure this out together. Let's at least sit down and have the conversation. If you can't
Yeah,
sit down and have a conversation, it's going to be a lot harder for you to move on in life because there's so many people. Everyone's so different. You're not going to agree on everything. We can agree to
right.
disagree, but move on. But yeah,
Yeah.
I really think what you're doing is awesome.
Thank
And
you.
where can people find you if they want to
Yeah.
learn more about the pressure free method?
So, if you're an action taker, and just like you booked this podcast with me,
Hmm.
I open my calendar up. So it's speakwithelle.com. So
Yeah.
ELLE. So speakwithelle.com goes right to my calendar. So if you're an action taker and you're like, I want to learn more, let's have a conversation.
Yeah.
So at this point, I'm still booking my own calls. So you can just go to speakwithelle.com and we can talk. Um, and I have a website. You can check out things on the website, look at the testimonials. But
Hmm.
as far as like really going in, I have programs that fit what you need. So when I get to learn about you, then we can match you with a program that works best for you. So that's
Perfect.
really like how I like to do things. And if you have a group, if you belong to any sort of group, a team, a group, a company, an organization, I have entire company-wide programs, campus-wide programs,
Mm.
where everybody can have access
Okay.
to this technology. This is a human technology, I believe, should be taught to everybody.
Yeah.
And it would reduce so many of the problems that we have in our world today. And when we can get it in the hands of everyone, it's just going to really change things. So, yeah.
100%.
So,
Yeah, I
yeah.
will definitely. I'll put those in the description below for people so they can just click right on the links for you. But again,
Yeah.
thank you for coming on. This was really
Sure.
awesome. I enjoyed
Super.
that. And
I
yeah,
loved it too. I'm so glad we were connected, Matthew.
absolutely.
Matt.
Matt, perfect. There we go.